Hello, how's everybody? Today we got ourselves a live stream coming. Today we're going to show some appreciation to Planet of the Apes, the first five movies in the series. I have not watched the reboots or anything from the reboots, so this is simply about the first five movies and the incredible story that they decided to tell and how it was, I think, very classic sci-fi. And science fiction for me is it's fantasy, clearly, but it's fantasy with a twist. While fantasy can be things that are completely come from the imagination, science fiction fictionalizes things that already exist. So, upright talking apes would be a thing that I would put in fantasy. It's a fantasy, but it's science fiction. While I don't know, fairies would be pure fiction because they literally don't exist. Unicorns would be pure fiction. I know these things are sort of these genres are they get muted and all this sort of stuff. But ultimately, the way I look at science fiction is if it's humanly possible, um, then it's science fiction. If it's in no way possible, period, then it's high fantasy. And but all fantasy is science fiction and all science fiction is fantasy. But so maybe that was a little bit confusing. Maybe I'll flesh that out that idea some other time. I don't have time to think about that right now. But ultimately, Planet of the Apes is a science fiction saga. I think it's fair to call it a saga that includes space exploration, allegedly. You could put that in quotations. But it's mostly time travel. It's and I didn't really know that that's what the movie was about until I watched it. I had always stayed away from Planet of the Apes. I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. And then I happened to find all five of the original movies on YouTube. And so one day I was like, look, I ain't doing nothing else. Let's go ahead and binge these things. So each day I watched a new Planet of the Apes movie. I didn't take extensive notes on any of them, but I did take jot down the general idea. So as I go through each movie, I may actually mix things up, especially there in the middle. But I have to say it was an absolutely fantastic run of movies. Now, as far as I know, Planet of the Apes comes from a book series. It comes from a novel series. I think a French novelist came up with the original concept, and it, of course, it turned into a set of movies. I know there was it's of course a huge franchise now. There's a television product and there was a reboot series and all that kind of stuff. I haven't gotten into any of that. I haven't read any of the comic books or anything like that either. So I'm just talking about strictly the first five films, which tell the story of the apes, how they came to sort of dominate planet Earth, and the relationship between human beings and each other, human beings and nature. Um, all of this is peak science fiction, and I think it's very entertaining. It might be something I might want to go talk to my dad about. It's one of those kinds of things because I know he probably watched it a lot. AJ3, how you doing, sir? How is everybody this evening? So the series starts in 1968. Um, the original Planet of the Apes, an astronaut by the name of Taylor and a couple of others travel to what they believe is another planet um, and find that it is inhabited with talking apes. And these talking apes, they hunt human beings. The humans cannot talk. And the apes are the highly civilized group of individuals on the planet. They become research subjects for uh, Cornelius, and I think her name was Zaria, the doctor, and the animal psychologists. They treat human beings like animals, where they operate on them, uh, lobotomies, test subjects, all this sorts of stuff. And it tells that story as Taylor and the rest of them are trying to figure out how to survive on the planet where the apes rule. And I thought it was a really good story. And I thought it was fun. It turned nature on its head. And I think that was obviously the goal. But what I like most is that it showed that a highly civilized people, the apes are pretty much the same as human beings. You know, they are in every way human. Now, they do have a hierarchy, as we see throughout the series. The hierarchy is that, well, they have, I guess you could say, stereotypes. So the chimpanzees are, they're not the highest level of ape, but they're sort of the scientific ones. You know, almost all of the higher level scientists are orangutans, and the gorillas are the soldiers. So the gorillas are the big dumb idiots. All they do is fight, and they do all the hunting, while the chimpanzees are sort of the midwits. They're the ones who can do high level intelligent um, processes and science. They understand the science of things, and orangutans do as well, but they're also the religious leaders. So right off the jump, you understand that when it comes to human beings don't have that sort of hierarchy where, because these apes are different kinds of apes. You know, like they can't reproduce amongst each other. Human beings can. That's why there's only one race, the human race, right? So, the orangutans seemingly have a position, and the chimpanzees have a position, and the gorillas have a position. And you don't really get a lot of that in the first movie. Is It becomes more fleshed out as the series goes along, how the uh, the orangutans, the gorillas, and all of them kind of, how they interact with their society, how they fell into the society. But the first movie, it plays out a lot like a thriller almost, because you're following the human characters, as they are basically terrorized by these apes. And, Taylor becomes, a test subject of the human beings, and he keeps managing to escape with the help of Zarya and Cornelius, as Zarya is very interested. Zira, I'm sorry, I just saw, I had to look it down. Her name is Zira. Zira is interested in the talking humans, much like if you go to a zoo, the zookeeper becomes enamored with animals that can do interesting things. Like, you'll often see psychologists, they'll become enamored with apes that learn sign language or have some way of communicating. That's was her connection to the human characters when she starts figuring out that they can talk and that they can communicate, they can write. Like, these are higher level functions that the apes didn't think humans were capable of. So she starts having that sort of motherly protective element of it. Now, Cornelius is her husband, and is he's kind of a beta. She kind of runs the roost in that situation, but they're apes, so and they're chimpanzees, so it's not like, you know too crazy. Um, but she's constantly bucking the system, constantly wanting to test the humans, see how whether they're smart or not, whether they can learn, whether they have the capabilities of learning, while the orangutans have no interest in that. I don't want to spoil the movie. I'm gonna try to talk about these movies without spoiling them. I mean, the twist obviously is that at the end is pretty. I mean, the movie is over 50 years old, for God's sake. So you learn that once you get to the near the end of the movie, you learn that Taylor, who thought he was on a whole different planet, ain't on a whole different planet at all. He's still on Earth. He just went into Earth's future. And that's the twist of the movie. That's the thing that's going to blow your mind. And that kind of had to be spoiled in order for you to go forward in the series. Is after you realize this, like, holy shit, it's not that they've gone to some kind of alternate reality. They've gone to the future. And so Taylor knows how the future will end. Well, not really, because he doesn't know how the apes came to rule humanity. And so that's what the rest of the movies are about. The rest of the movies are about how the apes went from being creatures that we experimented on, that could not communicate, that we thought were lower life forms, how they came to be superior life forms to us. And I found that to be very intriguing. And I was willing to go along with the story. Now, the costuming, I think for 1968, it was pretty good. You know, you could tell that they've just made masks, like especially for the orangutan characters, that went around the bottom of the mouth, and so you could see like the mouth moving. But they didn't try to do like any kind of special CGI or anything like that. It basically just it reminded me only a little bit of the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, except for they built an entire puppet and put a human being inside of it for the Turtles movie. For these Apes films, it was clear that, of course, these characters were human beings, but there was like prosthetic parts, like the lips and the face of the orangutans, and all the hair and everything was all, and it looked solid. I mean, clearly, if it was 1968, you would say it looked pretty damn good. But you're looking at it from 2024, it probably is the shits, right? You know, like, this is terrible. But it's not a gigantic action epic. You know, there's some action in it. There's a whole lot of chasing in it. People getting chased all the time. But it's not an action movie. It's more of a thriller, you know? And it's about an hour and 30 minutes. It's not like a slog to get through. Now, you do learn a lot about the ape society from the perspective of the human characters in the first movie. But it is expanded in the second movie. Beneath the Planet of the Apes was the second movie, came out in 1970. And so from this perspective, I'm not trying not to spoil these movies too much. Taylor and the others find a subterranean civilization that still exists of sort of human-esque type characters. And this leads to a gigantic battle between the apes and the subterranean humans. And this is where the series kind of picks up when it comes to action. Because the next several movies after this have some really good action set pieces. And they saved a lot of the action for the end. They lean heavily into the drama and the world building and that sort of stuff. And they save the action for the end. But you get in the second movie where the apes don't understand fully the world that they live in. There's still elements of the planet that they have not investigated. Even though they're the dominant species, there's still places they don't go, places they're forbidden to go, in a sense. And in these places is where they find the subterranean human civilization. And when Taylor finds this place, he finds that it's pretty damn bad. You know, it's not good at all, actually. And the apes follow him, and that's when they start the big battle. But of course, gotta spoil the end of this one in order to get to the next one. In the battle between the subterranean human-esque type characters, I'm not sure that they were fully human. The Earth is destroyed. So the entire Earth is destroyed, except for Zira and Cornelius, who left the planet before it was destroyed. And so Zero and Cornelius get on a spaceship and they travel and they think they have found a whole new civilization, but instead they have gone into Earth's past. So now we start from the very beginning. Escape from the Planet of the Apes is just Planet of the Apes in reverse. That's really all it is. Zero and Cornelius are talking apes that now live amongst human beings who are the advanced civilization. They share the knowledge that they know that in the future the apes will rule the world and the humans will be hunted by the apes and experimented on by the apes. And the humans get paranoid and decide they're going to kill these talking apes. And so just like in the first movie, where the apes were not thrilled about the idea of talking humans, and Escape of the Planet of the Apes was in 1971, Zero and Cornelius become a target. Now, again, it's the exact same situation where there's human beings who are interested in the talking apes. And they're saying, oh shit, apes are talking. You know, they know the future. Tell us more. Give us all the information that you have. And Zero and Cornelius, they tell what they know. But once they tell that the Earth is destroyed, and that the apes are going to rule the world, the humans seek to prevent that from happening. They want to prevent that future from occurring. And the idea is the only way to stop it from occurring is to kill Zero and Cornelius. So that's what they decided to do. So they spend the rest of the movie running away, essentially, running around and being scared. And then we find out that Zero and Cornelius are going to have a baby. And at the end of the movie, some certain things happen in which the baby survives, but Zero and Cornelius do not. I'm not going to spoil the movie too much for you. And this leads to 1972's conquest of the Planet of the Apes. This is where Caesar, the baby of Zero and Cornelius, he's all grown up. He was kept a secret from all of the human beings who dislike the idea of apes running society and trying to prevent the destruction of Earth. And he's raised essentially in captivity, and he starts leading a revolution. So of course, there's a bunch of apes, some of whom can speak, most of them cannot, and he starts to sort of organize these apes. And this leads to probably the greatest speech, and it's at the end of Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. And I want to play that speech. I didn't really think about doing it until just now, but this is what made me a fan of the franchise. If we're going to be if we're going to be fair, this back and forth between him and a human character is some of the best writing. It's extremely well done, and it made me rethink everything that I've ever written, because I don't think I put enough thought into things. So this is about a 4-minute bit. It's going to be audio only, of course. I'm going to just play it so that you can listen. So the apes are they found a way to take over, okay? And now they haven't taken over the entire planet at this point. They've just managed to overthrow certain sections of human society. So Caesar is there, and the apes are hooting and hollering. They're very excited, and he's watching.
This is not how it's supposed to be. You, oh my. Violence prolongs hate prolongs violence. By what right are you spreading blood? By the slaves' right to punish his persecutors. I, a descendant of slaves, am asking you to show humanity. But I was not born human. I know. The child of the evolved apes. Whose children shall rule the earth. For better or for worse? Do you think it could be worse? Do you think this riot will win freedom for all your kind? By tomorrow it will be too late. What a tiny, mindless insect like the Emperor Moth can communicate with another over a distance of 80 miles. An Emperor ape might do slightly better? Slightly? What you have seen here today, apes on the 5 continents will be imitating tomorrow. With knives against guns, with kerosene cans against flamethrowers. Where there is fire, there is smoke. In that smoke, from this day forward, my people will crouch and conspire and plot and plan for the inevitable day of man's downfall, the day when he finally and self-destructively turns his weapons against his own kind, the day of the writing in the sky, when your cities lie buried under radioactive rubble, when the sea is a dead sea, and the land is a wasteland, out of which I will lead my people from their captivity, and we shall build our own cities, in which there will be no place for humans except to serve our ends, and we shall found our own armies, our own religion, our own dynasty, and that day is upon you now!
So the character arc of Caesar from Planet of the Apes is very good because he starts out very confused, not really understanding why he has to never speak around certain people. And he's seeing the apes being used as servants. You know, the apes are being forced to clean and sweep, and they're always being misused and abused by the human beings. But he's a good-natured ape. And what you just heard is how he is at the end of this movie, which is Denmark VC. You know, he is now the ape version of like Che Guevara. You know, like he's going to lead the ape revolution, and he hates humans. And that is, it gets him. This movie shows you, and you know, literally, uh, Escape from the Planet of the Apes and Conquest of the Planet of the Apes shows you that human beings are detestable, and hatred of the human beings by Caesar and the rest of the apes is 100% logical. You know, Caesar comes to the belief that human beings are self-destructive and violent, and he wants the apes to be better. That's his general idea, is that the apes are going to be better. And that's what the beginning of this argument is all about. I don't know if you guys could hear it fully. But his whole thing is, we can do better than the humans. Our world is going to be better than the humans' world. Now, he doesn't know the future that his parents came from. He doesn't know that much about it. It's the same. You know, it's just apes, right? It's the same. But he has this high-minded belief that because he experienced oppression against the humans, that this is the nature of humanity. What he doesn't realize is this is the nature of highly evolved creatures. All highly evolved creatures infight. Even if they were just regular normal apes, they would still infight. You see animals fight each other all the time: lions, tigers, rams, you know, sharks. They all fight each other. But human beings, of course, we created, you know, guns in order to fight each other, nuclear weapons, and those sorts of things. So we're a higher evolved life form. But he comes from the position of trying to believe that there has to be something better than what the humans have done. And an ape society is probably the best idea for Earth, because the humans have done nothing but destroy. They've done nothing but ruin. And you could say, well, look, that's nothing special. You see that in, I don't know, Trigun. You see that Millions Knives say the same thing. He's a plant, and he thinks that, plants should rule the earth. Well, not even the earth. It's not earth that they're on. Should rule the planet. There's no place for humans. And I'm not saying that it's original. It may not even be, the first time. But again, this was way before Trigun, but it was like 1972. But it's not the first time people have expressed that human beings might be part of the problem of what's going on Earth. That's not the point. It's not the point that the idea is original. It's that if you follow these films, you already know it's not true. And then if you follow the movies, you'll know also that the ape society was less evolved than the human society. The apes didn't have guns. The apes, what did they have guns in Planet of the Apes? I think they did. In the first movie, did they? I believe they did. Yeah, they did. They did. They had guns. They didn't have like cars and stuff. They rode horses. They didn't have like cars and television and that sort of stuff, right? So there was like some technology that the apes didn't have in the first movie that exists in this movie, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. So you question whether the ape civilization is better than the human civilization due to the technology. And I probably should have took better notes, but I wanted to watch these things with my, just watch them and enjoy them. But the end of Conquest of the Planet of the Apes is very good. And I want to play a little bit more of it because there's about another 2 minutes of Caesar yelling at this guy, and it's incredibly fun. So the apes have the humans right where they want them, and they can kill them if they wanted to. And Caesar wants to kill the humans. At least you get that idea. You get that idea from the beginning. I like the drama here. Like nobody's speaking, but you're getting a lot of storytelling from the visuals. He's about to. And all of these are gorillas, by the way. So at the end of the movie, you see a bunch of gorillas, and they're acting like gorillas, basically, which is generally how gorillas behave. They're the big dumb apes. And Caesar's a chimpanzee, by the way, just in case you wanted to know. This actually made me go and learn about apes too. I became very interested in monkeys after this. Not super, interested, but I thought there was more to it than that. It might have been a different clip. Anyway, so Conquest of the Planet of the Apes ends with the apes empire starting to build. This brings us to Battle for the Planet of the Apes, 1973. The apes now rule society, and the human beings are their servants. Caesar learns more about his parents, and then there's a civil war between the apes. One of Caesar's first rules upon capturing Earth, because that ape shall never kill ape. And so the rest of this movie is all about how the gorillas aren't exactly willing to play ball. Okay. So there is really huge set pieces in here in terms of fighting and combat. It becomes a lot more action oriented here. Um, Caesar softens. You know, he doesn't hate humans nearly as much now. He's in control of the planet. Basically, he's the king, so he can afford. I think he says at one point, because he's not human, he can afford to be humane. And so you get the idea that the humans are servants in the ape society, but he knows that they can talk and that sort of thing. It's not like the humans have gone all the way back to the first movie where they can't speak. But he, has all these rules where the humans are subservient to the apes. They are the teachers of the apes, but they are not allowed to tell the apes no ever. And this becomes an issue because the apes were at one point slaves. So now they're saying you're never allowed to give us commands anymore. You're never allowed to deny us anything. As you was able to deny us before, you cannot deny us now. And it's a huge slave rebellion sort of motif going on here, which of course some people will say, it's like the French, they overthrew, or the Haitians, they overthrew the French and kicked them off the island. And then they start to fight amongst themselves because then in Haiti, you started having a lot of coup d'etats over time, where different Haitian leaders were overthrown by other Haitian leaders. And that happens in Battle for the Planet of the Apes, where a gorilla decides to challenge Caesar um, and try to overthrow him. I'm not going to spoil it, but Caesar's dream, of course, is for humans and apes to coexist. That becomes his dream later on, is that there will be no control by the apes. Even though he would prefer that to the humans being in control. But he learns throughout this movie that the apes aren't much better. You know, that the sad part is that the apes are no better. So it's interesting. It's really good. And I say this stretch of 5 flicks is really tight. And the fact that each one of these movies came out pretty much the very next year shows how much planning they put into it and how much thought they put into it. And if this was a TV show, it probably wouldn't be this well written. But from 1968, they took 2 years off to create the next one. But then after that, it was one every single year until 1973. And then I think there was a TV series later on. But I really liked Planet of the Apes, the original series. Do I want to see the reboots? I really don't think I need to. I think I got everything I needed out of these movies here. Now, is it possible that there is some parts or bits of the story that are missing? For instance, how do we get from Caesar to, Planet of the Apes? Like, how do we get from Caesar's dream of humans and apes living together to a society in which the apes rule and the humans are nonverbal, barely communicative, you know, creatures that are brutalized by the apes? I don't know. That's a good question, but I don't think I need that answered. I'm really just concerned that if I watch the reboot movies, they're gonna ruin this and not really understand it and not get it. So I'll say I suggest everybody watch Planet of the Apes, the early movies. They're on YouTube. It won't cost you a dime. And altogether, it's about 5 hours. You can actually watch one a day. Maybe if you off for Christmas, go ahead and binge them. And I'm pretty sure you're going to enjoy yourself if you like science fiction. There's not a, it's old clearly, but as I think I said this before, I'll say it again. The 1960s and 70s was peak for science fiction because we were thinking more about what's possible. It's amazing that stuff like Doctor Who and Star Trek all came out, and Star Wars even I think came out in the late 70s, right, or the mid 70s, maybe even the early 70s. How all that stuff came out in the 60s and 70s. You know, um, the amount of comic books that went into space because of the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union gave us stuff like Fantastic Four and the Guardians of the Galaxy. You know, it was tremendous. It was an interesting cultural moment that when you look back at it, I can't think of any other time where we were so interested in things beyond Earth. And to be quite honest, or things beyond ourselves and Earth. And there's always going to be runs of, monsters, Godzilla, vampires, and werewolves and shit like that. But space in general, you know, what's out there beyond the stars, what's possible, and how other kinds of societies can be structured, and what kinds of people would exist in those societies, both good and bad, both normal and abnormal. I think Star Trek, that's why Star Trek was one of my favorite series when I was a kid, because you had all these different people. And not every episode, but at least every other episode or so, you got to dig into a whole different society, different religions. Sometimes they even reproduce differently. They have different conceptions of things like war, magic, which is basically just high technology, all this sort of stuff. And it really makes you think, when did we just become so obsessed with modern day, what they call it, navel gazing? Now we don't even care about space. And I saw, to a degree, there's a video game. Is it the video game Intergalactic, where they had the female character shave all her hair off? It's like people aren't even interested in space anymore. They're far more interested in how this female character shaved all her hair off and how weird she looks, and not interested at all in the world, what the society could be, how it could be structured, what kind of ships they might have, what kind of weapons and technology they might have. None of that stuff matters anymore. All that matters now is there's a female character with all her hair cut off. And people are instantly like, that's the symbol of, we don't want to play that game. We're not interested in that. But if that was in Star Trek, and it's been in Star Trek, there's been plenty of bald-headed female characters who don't have hair. And nobody ever said anything. But because it's modern day politics, and now people have realized, if you see a character with their hair shaved off, or a character with a modified gender or whatever the fuck, it's not just science fiction. Anything can happen. Much like there was a character in Deep Space Nine who could transfer its consciousness to a male body and a female body. And if you'd have told people, hey, this is some science fiction shit where this person is, can transfer from bodies to bodies, and you refer to him as she when she's in a female body, you refer to him as he when he's in a male body, nobody would have thought transgenderism, and it would have acted accordingly because everybody would have known it's not real. But if you'd have did that same episode of Star Trek today, it would be considered utter woke nonsense. So that goes to show that we have really fallen off, in terms of learning about ourselves and being obsessed with ourselves and our perspectives on modern day politics and modern day cultural wars. And I know it's not the fault of the cultural critic. And people like to do that, like to blame like Critical Drinker for trying to find woke shit in the movies and all that kind of stuff. It's the fault of the creators for putting woke shit in there and for coming out, and since they all have to do it, pledging allegiance to DEI and wokeness and all that shit, because now people are looking for it. If you never would have pledged allegiance to any of that shit, if you just made what you wanted to make in the way you wanted to make it, and then let people like it or not like it, then it wouldn't be an issue. But because people are realizing and they become more sensitive than ever to movies where the male characters are sidelined. That's why I mentioned like Cornelius in the Planet of the Apes, he's a beta male. This was in the 1960s. Nobody really, I don't think anybody thought too much about him being sort of a push around, sort of an apologist for the behaviors of his wife and being subservient to the other apes and all this sort of stuff. Nobody really even thought about that. I'm pretty sure they didn't. But you think about it definitely today, because of how ingrained it is in our culture that women should rule everything, even though women don't rule in Planet of the Apes. I'm pretty sure they didn't know much about bonobos at the time. But bonobos are a female-led species of ape, the cousins of the chimpanzee. And maybe that's what Zira and Cornelius are. They're bonobos, not chimpanzees. Who knows? Anyway, they look just like chimpanzees. Anyway, every time I watch like these old science fiction movies and they're actually good, and they actually, and yes, there is some interesting racial stuff in Planet of the Apes in the later movies, but that's just kind of part of this is what humans do, like this is one of the things that humans are involved with. But I hate that we threw that away. We completely destroyed it. So now that human beings don't even trust each other when it comes to these subjects anymore. If somebody does come out with a cool space adventure, the first thing people are going to look at is the main character male or female? Oh, is he male? Is he gay? Is he trans? Does he kick everybody's ass, or is he, a pushover? What's his personality? The culture that he lives in, is it a female-led, culture, or is it a male-led culture? And all these sorts of things take you out of it. And it's kind of depressing if we're being honest, because it makes everything difficult to watch and difficult to enjoy. And I'm not saying that it's the fault of the cultural critics, because what a lot of people want you to do is just shut up and consume. That's what they want you to do. They want you to shut up and go watch, go read these comic books where Superman is being cucked by, some random guy, or Spider-Man's wife is married to some other guy. Go read those comic books and don't think about it. But it's like, you didn't write that comic book in a vacuum. You wrote that comic book under the pledge that you had to take in order to get that job. So now everybody's looking for it. And maybe that movie was meant to be, something feminist about Zira from Planet of the Apes. But you wouldn't be able to tell because the male characters were still strong. They still did what men would do in these situations. And they were fun movies that didn't harp on the gender shit. And I was watching a video, I forgot who it's from, maybe if I look it up. They was talking about the guy that apparently is going to be some guy. Shit, I forgot what the guy's name is. Is it Druckmann? He's going to be coming up with some new video game, and it was from Greg Owen. And he was talking about Neil Druckmann having a daughter, and all of a sudden he became this guy who took the woke pledge, and now every female character is his daughter. Every female character is, got to be positioned and thought of in a certain way. And it started affecting his work, which obviously it would. And I don't even really know. I don't know that much about anything, to be quite honest. I don't play video games anymore. And so I saw the same thing with the Witcher stuff because I got thrust into that. I don't know how. It's just one of those things that just popped up on my timeline. I don't know shit about the Witcher. I don't know anything. And as a person who doesn't know anything, the first thing that triggered me is it's a fantasy game with a female protagonist. And I was just like, oh, it's another one of those. And then I kind of went through and started seeing how people responded to this. And I was like, okay, look, we're just at that point where this is the new normal. Where a video game comes out, people find reason to get mad at the video game. The people who are the defenders of the game say that you are looking for wokeness where there is no wokeness, that everything's fine. It's all in your head. Then you look up the creators and they've taken up the woke pledge. They've promised to have wokeness all up and through that thing. And then you get mad that you getting gaslighted by the defenders. And the defenders are mad that you're mad. And so you're like, okay, I don't get it. I don't get it. It's an endless, pointless cycle with video games, with movies. It's just that has dominated the discourse. It has dominated the discourse. I can tell you this. I've seen so much stuff on The Witcher, but one thing I've never seen is the motherfucking plot. I don't even know what it's about. I don't have any idea what it's about. But I know that females can't be witchers because that's the first thing I was fucking told when I saw a photo of one. But I don't know anything else about the franchise. And that becomes the dominant conversation. And I saw another one from Strange Brain Parts. He doesn't like this comic book series called Tarot because the characters are clearly drawn to be incredibly busty and sexualized or whatever. I listened to that entire video, and I don't think he mentioned the plot of the series once. He just talked about all the stuff in it he didn't like, and I was just kind of like, oh, well, all right. At least got to give guys like Critical Drinker some credit. At least he'll tell you what the fucking plot of the thing is. We should know something about it. But we've moved so far away from the space race, and it's embarrassing, man. Like they had a comic book series a couple of years ago called Why the Last Man, about how this last guy survived there was some kind of pandemic that killed all men in the world or something like that. It was a comic book series and they made it into a TV show. But when they made the TV show, they had a trans man survive when all the men died. And that just people were like, how? How did a trans man like that's what we mean by like the woke pledge. You didn't have to put a trans person in this story at all. You could have just made it crystal clear. You chose to create this drama. You chose to create this problem. And it doesn't make sense. Because trans men are still biologically male. So if it affects males, it affects trans men too. But not in their world, which of course I don't think it was ever explained. Because again, I didn't watch it. But I remember the whole thing about it. Everything about it. It was stupid. So then let's use that argument to its logical conclusion. If all the men died, but the trans man didn't die, what kept the trans man alive that didn't kill all the other men? Is it the fact that this person said, "I'm a trans woman"? I think wait a minute. Yeah, it's trans woman. The trans woman survived, which means technically it was a biological male that survived. I'm getting mixed up again. But it doesn't matter. The idea was that there was some kind of virus or sickness or illness or whatever that was killing off men. And of course, men are male. So the general idea is if a trans woman or whatever survived, would it have to be something that males either have genetically or something that they engage in socially or culturally? But this was global, so it wasn't cultural. It has to be genetic. So how did a trans woman survive something that kills all the men genetically? Now you could say, well, there is one man that survived, so maybe there's two. Maybe. But then you destroy the entire premise of the fucking story. So I don't want to get into it, but it's a clear issue of somebody deciding this was important enough to put it in the story. The plot be damned. Explaining it, who knows? I don't know if they explained it or not. Yes, a trans man is a biological woman. A trans woman is a biological male. That was my level of confusion. Because I'm like, trans man survived. I'm like, no, how you do a trans man? He's like, no. That makes sense. A trans man would survive because a trans man is female. So I'm just like, there's so many franchises where they do this stuff and it doesn't make sense. It just does not make sense. And it's taken us away from what we could be doing in terms of having fun escapism. And now people don't even care about space anymore. There was a time when people cared about space. They don't care about that stuff anymore. There was a time when people literally cared about war and they studied war. There's YouTubers who study like old battles and stuff. Now there's a Tyler Perry movie where they're arguing about women delivering the mail. And I just looked at this and was like, what the? It wasn't even the point that the women were delivering the mail or that the women were being treated as heroes. I watched the trailer and I turned it off as soon as I forget who it was. Was it, I forget what actress it was, but I think it was Kerry Washington. But she says, all they think we good for was delivering some damn mail. I turned it off. I turned it off right there. Because this means two things. One, she doesn't understand the importance of her own job. Two, whoever wrote that and had her say it is belittling the job of people to deliver the mail in prisons or war zones. where mail is some of the most important stuff for a person to have. Imagine you're over in Germany, or you're over in Italy. You're overseas. You haven't seen your family in forever. You got friends dying. You might be maimed. God damn it, a letter from your girlfriend, or a letter from your mom, a letter from your little brother could lift your spirits, keep you alive for another 6 months. Delivering the mail is incredibly important in a situation in which people are losing their lives. And we have this movie belittling it before we even get to the point of it being black women. And they're heroic for delivering the mail. I'm not even tripping on that. I'm tripping on the fact that she thought she should be out on the front line or something. All we good for is delivering the damn mail. Are you serious? And it just goes to this thought process that if you're doing anything except what you think other people are doing something more important than what you're doing. So you want to do what they're doing instead of doing what you do. You know? All we good for is delivering the damn mail. What else do you want to do? Guess what? Everybody had to do their part. There were some guys who got sent overseas and all they became was chefs. All they did was cook. There were some guys who went to the military. They were on the wrestling team. They, represented the United States military in sports. Everybody did something different. It's your job to deliver the mail. The movie should have been about how mail is important, But instead, we got sassy black woman who thinks that she's super important, and not even she's too important to deliver the mail. She should be doing something else. It's like, come on, man. I can't stand this. I can't stand it. It's terrible. It's the shits. That turns people off. Even if they were down for it, they don't want to hear that shit, man. It's disgusting. The most recent movie that was lauded, that was about space, was about black women astronauts or something like that. Because that was very important that you learn that the black women, there wouldn't have been NASA without black women. It's just worship of the black female. I don't get it. If you got a unique story, it's a fun story, tell that story. Who gives a fuck what they look like? But that's not what we have. It's sick. It's truly sick. You said they're constantly changing the narrative around transition. Yeah, I don't care. But the thing is, I don't even pretend to concern myself with that too much no more. I don't, like I said, a lot of that stuff is I don't watch a lot of new movies. I don't play a lot of new video games. I don't watch a lot of new television shows. Everything that I just pick up and watch mostly is old, unless it's anime. Then I might watch something new. But most of that shit that I watch is old. I watched a bunch of blaxploitation movies this week. Watched Bucktown again. I watched Hill Up in Harlem, which was technically the Hill Up in Harlem was basically the sequel to Black Caesar, and I didn't know that until I watched it. And again, even though those movies weren't great, like blaxploitation movies are bad, for the record. Okay, most of them are terrible. It's terrible acting, really kind of crappy plots. The plots are a little repetitive to a degree, but it's something different at least. But they're very woke, like the movie Boss N-Word, let's say, which was a Western starring Fred Williamson, the Hammer. It wasn't all that, but it was interesting because, hey, he was trying to make a Western, and he wanted to be a cowboy too. Shit, we can be cowboys. He also made a stupid movie called Warriors of the Wasteland. That was some kind of rip off of Mad Max. That was one of the worst movies I've ever seen. You know, it was one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I watched it anyway, though. I just didn't give it that close attention. But a lot of blaxploitation movies are legitimately bad. You know, they're pretty damn bad. But at least, you know, there's some level of creativity to them. In today's world, there's little to no creativity to any of this stuff. It's the same shit again and again. People complaining about female-led video games. People complaining about the gays and the transes and all that stuff. You know, we live in a hypercritical situation as it is anyway. I mean, even when you talk about something like Dragon Ball Daima, you know, 11 episodes in, people are saying it's the worst series in the world. It's not even over yet. They're already saying it's the worst. It certainly has the worst pacing, I can tell you that much. But at least they're not saying it's woke shit. So it's fine. WG Phil says space just became the free reign to put the DEI stuff. And you know what? It's fine if it's a fake culture. Like nobody's gonna argue with you about, you know, if you create some kind of Martian society where the women rule and the men are subservient, because it's an alien society, who cares? You know, as long as it functions appropriately in the story that you're telling, who really gives a shit? They can have 4 eyes, 8 eyes. The women can be, you know, born with penises or whatever the hell you want to do. Because it's space, it's not real, it's fantasy. It's just like having a unicorn, you know? It's when you start doing it to human characters that's where stuff gets weird. You know? Where there's more fiction in the human parts than there are in the other parts. You know, it's odd, man. I can't stand it. I wish it was not. I wish this was not the case. But that's also why I go again. I want going back and watch. Like I watched The Flying Guillotine the other day. Master of the Flying Guillotine, rather. Really bad movie, but iconic in a way, and I enjoyed it in a sense. I'm probably gonna watch the Deadly Venoms tomorrow. WG Phil says escaped Nazis did more for NASA than black women. If you looked at history, yeah, there wouldn't be a NASA if it wasn't for Nazis. Nazi scientists helped build NASA. That is correct. I'm in an interesting bit, man. I wish stuff wasn't as bad as it is right now. What's your thoughts on Fat Joe versus FBA and Lord Jamar? I have no thoughts on it because I don't really get rid of this box real quick. I don't really have too many thoughts on it because all I heard was the clip with Fat Joe talking about the FBAs. And the FBAs are a stupid, goofy ass cult that if you following in behind Tariq Nasheed, I don't take what you're saying seriously. I don't take nothing Tariq Nasheed says seriously. Who cares? And if Fat Joe is wasting his time arguing with those people, he's ridiculous. So I knew though this is about it's about the influence of Puerto Ricans and Hispanics on hip hop. I think that's where it began, where you know, Tariq Nasheed is doing a documentary series to dispel the fact that Jamaicans and Puerto Ricans and all these people had anything to do with the creation and popularity of hip hop. Which is why I say, look, if you want to waste your time on that guy, go for it. He's a grifter, you know. I don't take anything he says seriously. I don't care what he says. So to me, it doesn't matter. I don't think he's going to be like, this is the guy who claims that, you should care about black people, and he starts making racial jokes about black people. Like I said, Tariq Nasheed's from the city, from the same town. I know he doesn't live here anymore. He lives, somewhere else. But he'll sell you the sickness and the cure. You know, this dude was a rapper. He was in a funk band. He was a pimp. He wanted to be on TV. It's like, I don't take none of that nigga say seriously, man. Y'all got to stop it. Stop trying to pump Tariq Nasheed up. He's useless. So that's my view of everything. Is I don't trust Tariq Nasheed, and I don't care what Tariq Nasheed thinks about anything, if we're being honest. But Fat Joe has also told tons of lies as he sit down and do all his sit down interviews. He's done nothing but lie. He's told a lot of lies. So it's two liars arguing. Who gives a fuck? So I'm definitely gonna watch that documentary when it comes out, though. Definitely, because I for sure want to see how he's going to get around what pretty much everybody and throughout the history of hip hop has said about Puerto Rican break dancers and a lot of these housing projects where hip hop was created, the block parties and all this kind of stuff. They were mixed race units. I wonder how he's going to get around that. So I'm interested in that. Not so interested in anything else, though. On the manga and anime front, I've been watching. Was it Dan Da Dan? I've been watching that. That show is crazy. That show is crazy as hell, man. It's fun. It's a really fun anime. I see why um, it's kicking Diamond in the nuts. It's not because it's a better show, but it's far more creative. There's a lot of stuff happening. Um, like a show that decides that they're going to have both aliens and ghosts. Like, okay, let's go for it. That's crazy. Let's go for it. We doing aliens and ghosts? Like, usually people do one or the other. You're like, fuck it, we going in, we gonna do both. All right. And then the characters are very likable. You know, you genuinely like the characters. Do I watch documentaries, brother? I'm always looking for a new documentary to watch. I just saw on YouTube there's some kind of documentary on He-Man. I might watch that. I'm always looking for documentaries to watch. Um, I don't think I did a update on Dragon Ball Diamond in several weeks, but the pacing on that show has been brutal. It's been brutal. Is I watched this most recent episode 11. Like, I watched all the episodes, but I was legitimately pissed off at the end of episode 11 because of how terrible the pacing is. It's so dry. It takes so long to get from one thing to the other, and it's like it shouldn't even be this way because these characters can fly. Like, all of them can fly. Why do we need to have an airplane at all? It's so ridiculous. All of them except Bulma can fly. It's so dumb, man. I don't get it. But I'm just kind of like they're everybody's saying, oh, it's starting to pick up. I'm like, yeah, but shit. I'm so tired of airplanes being destroyed and knocked from the skies. Like, why are they traveling so slow? They can fly. You know, it's getting there, man. Like, Diamond's getting very close to jumping the shark. And look, it's a fun little Dragon Ball series. It's not a must watch though. Nothing has happened in Daima so far that you absolutely positively need to see. The fights with the Tamagamis are fun, but they're clearly goofing around. The ferocity isn't there, the sense of urgency isn't there. They're fighting the Tamagamis in base form. You know, like, so it's hard to tell how strong the characters actually are. Um, there's plot holes all over the place. But that just happens when a series goes forever. There's going to be plot holes. I'm just not surprised about that, especially with so many people writing the shows. And this plot convenience says, "Oh, Piccolo doesn't speak Namekian anymore." Plot convenience because you got to have this guy go with us. You know, never. I'm just like, come on, man. You know, let's get this thing moving. I just want this shit to hurry up. They say it's only like 20 episodes. That means it's like 10 more. And it feels like the show has barely even started. You know, it literally feels like they haven't done much of anything yet. But it hasn't gotten to the point where I'm like, I don't want to watch it anymore. It does get to the point where I'm just kind of like, I should have done it like I did Super, which is when it came to Super, I didn't watch it until it had got enough episodes for me to binge. That's what I should have done with Daima. I should have waited 5 or 6 weeks, watched a bunch of episodes, and then wait 5 more weeks and watch a bunch of episodes, and just did that rather than I'm waiting every single week because now it's getting aggravating. If an episode goes by and nothing's happened, or there is some pissy fight where they're beating up guys in a strip club or whatever the fuck, I'm like, bro, this is getting stupid. You know, they're constantly eating, they're constantly sleeping, they're constantly in danger due to people that they can easily beat up. Who cares about any of this shit, man? Like, let's get a move on. You know, the pace is so fucking slow. It's getting on my nerves. But other than that, I can't say that the characters are bad. The characters are fine. You know, the characters are who they are. You know, especially with the main cast, they are who they are. They haven't changed that. They're just in children's bodies, and Goku's less hygienic than before, and a little bit more gross, which I'm not a fan of, but whatever. But I haven't gotten to the point where I'm sick of Daima yet. Um, WG Phil says you see Miles Morales actor from Spider Verse. I don't even know who that is. He says he's crashing out because Gwen's actress got engaged. He got called a weirdo by Homecoming's Liz Allen actress. I don't. Is that what that's about? I saw some pretty girl eating soup, and I was like, I don't care about this shit. I don't. Like she's fine, but she eating soup and talking about her personal life. I didn't pay that shit no attention, but I know that's what that was about because I think I saw the guy's name pop up. It's been all over social media, so it was hard to miss it, but I didn't do any digging on it. I don't know like what the crux of everything is. I just look at it and say, look, this is clearly not something where I think the issue is she's engaged and he posted some shit about her on social media. Like, okay, who cares? We're not going to get into these very grown adults doing very childish things. It's extremely childish. And since I don't know who these people are anyway, I'm just gonna. I don't know if I muted their names. I know I muted Cardi B. I know I muted her name because of all the stuff that was popping up this week about her and Offset. I'm done with that. I don't care if I never see another Cardi B post ever. Because I'm not a fan anyway, and she doesn't add anything to any conversations. So who gives a shit, really? So it's it's stupid, and I don't know. Hollywood is full of bullshitters and weirdos. But I did see that Jay-Z got that he got that guy on the ropes. That's for sure. He kicking the shit out of that lawyer. He already got the young lady who claimed she was raped by Jay-Z, he already got her to backing up. She on the back foot already. So this thing is about. I told you guys. I told you. Witch hunts always get to a certain point. They always get to a certain point, and we even got to the point where they accused Beyonce's husband. So now they about to start tearing these things to shreds. Jay-Z is showing you guys how to fight these situations. You got to get on the attack. One of the first things he did is he wanted the person not to be anonymous anymore. So you got to go out here and say who you are. And that's when you started to hear, oh, she misunderstood and all this stuff. Like, yeah, I bet. You betcha you forgot. You don't know what's going on. You're confused. Better get it together. You said, where is Dame Dash when you need them? Would you rather be independent just like he is? I don't know what Dame Dash does. It's like every time I see Dame Dash, he's doing some kind of interview, and he's not doing anything of note, let's say. He just seems to be doing interviews, talking about the good old days, which is fine. I'm not against guys doing interviews, but it doesn't seem like he's got anything new going on. Last I heard, he still has to sell his piece of Rockefeller. I heard they said Drake wanted to buy it. I don't think it's going to do anybody any good, though. So I got a ton of new shit because I bought a bunch of stuff from in stock trades, and then some stuff came in when I did my monthly pickup. So I got Tsugumi Project number 6. Tsugumi Project is a pretty good manga. It's sort of a post-nuclear Holocaust. You know, there's this guy or these pair of guys. They're kind of like it's kind of like The Condemned, where these guys are prisoners and they're sent to nuclear wasteland Japan to find a certain weapon, and then they get to go home if they find it. They get to commute their sentence or whatever. But anyway, it's 6 books in, not 6 chapters, 6 volumes, I guess you could say. I ended up getting chapter 6, volume 6. Oh, I'm using my language correctly. And then I realized I didn't have volume 5, and I looked on Comic Hub and saw that volume 5 is still on order. So I was like, well, I can't read 6 without reading 5. And then thankfully, I was smart enough to not read 6 because I had to order 5 from Amazon. So I read 5 first. And it's very important I read 5 before 6 to understand what was happening. So I got Tsugumi Project 5 and 6. I like the series. I think the characters are fun. There's bird people in it, which is interesting. I got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles City Fall Part 2. I got this from In Stock Trades. I got Ain't No Grave, which is Scotty Young and Jorge Corona. I got the graphic novel of that because I love Jorge Corona, and Scotty Young is a pretty good comic book writer. He wrote Middle West, which I think is a very good. So without even reading one, I didn't even bootleg this series. I saw a couple of panels as I flipped through the comic book store. I looked at a couple of panels and said, I'm just going to buy it when it comes out in the trade. So that's what I did. I got a collection of Judge Anderson. This one is called Satan, where I think she's going to do battle with Lucifer, Satan. I'm a big fan of Judge Dredd. So I've been getting a lot of the essential Dredd books. I got Trigun Maximum number 3, the big hard book. I already got the first 3 because Trigun was canceled when the book canceled, so they did a Trigun hardcover, just sort of omnibus, and then it's Trigun Maximum. So Maximum 1, 2, and 3. I got all of those. So it's basically 4 books total, but it's Trigun Maximum. It has 3 so far. I got Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips because this is my favorite combination of all of comics. I got most of the Reckless series. I already had 2 of these, but I just ordered Follow Me Down, The Ghost in You, and Reckless. And I got all of those. I got the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Ultimate Collection Volume 1, which is going to be a big deal. I got a Black Panther hardcover. I have the Elric Volume 4, The Weird of the White Wolf, which I read the book of that. But this is from the Michael Moorcock Library, and Titan Comics was reprinting the Michael Moorcock Elric books. And I also got Volume 6, Bane of the Black Sword. I got Sakamoto Days, number 14. I got Candy and Cigarettes, number 10. I think Candy and Cigarettes ends at 11. I think. So I think there's one more volume for Candy and Cigarettes, and then that's it. I got a couple of loose issues too. Let's talk about these. Get through here. Conan the Barbarian. I get Conan every month. This is pretty much Conan. This is number 17. This is pretty much the only book I like to read weekly or monthly. Like pretty much every other book I'm thinking about canceling, except Conan the Barbarian. I love it. Gunslinger Spawn. I'm about ready to cancel this too, because I'm thinking that the story is starting to drag. The only reason I have kept it in my pull list is because it's $2.99, which makes it the cheapest book in my pull list. But I'm thinking of stopping it because they started a new Gunslinger Spawn series, and I was thinking about I'm going to trade wait for that one. But this one is seemingly off the rails. There's no sense of urgency anymore. I'm not even sure what's going on. It's another one of these series with Spawn where once I think it was it what issue was that where all the Spawns lost their powers in King Spawn, I think it was, whatever. No, it wasn't King Spawn, it was in regular Spawn. So Gunslinger and all of them lost their powers. All of the series lost the steam right afterwards. Gunslinger Spawn was legitimately fun. Now it's kind of bleh. So I'm thinking about canceling it, but I'm gonna give it maybe 2 more issues. Kaya, which is legitimate. Kaya is pretty good. I don't want to cancel Kaya. So I like it. I just don't want to have a bunch of floppies around. I still got some bags and boards, so I will keep collecting Kaya. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This is number 4. This is the Donatello issue. I like this issue. It's a little dark. I think people have a misunderstanding about the TMNT, is that they think that TMNT is all cowabunga and eating pizza, when TMNT was dark from the beginning. This is about Donatello being essentially with like a gladiator, a modern day gladiator. He's been trapped and he fights to keep the other mutant animals from having to do combat from humans who want to kill them. And he loses his mind a little bit. He kind of goes crazy, which a lot of people don't like, but I like it. And I got TMNT / Naruto number 1. It was a fun read, but it's all over the place. So I think I'll just stick to 1. I don't think I'll pick up the rest. So there's that. I think that's it for comics. I have the Amazing Spider-Man, which is a Marvel Masterworks. I have a Marvel Masterworks Black Panther coming too. Like I said, I told you guys I read Kagurabachi. That's pretty good, actually. So most everything that I've been reading has been good. I haven't read anything that I thought was shit yet. Um, but TMNT and Naruto, I don't think I need to continue further with that. The crossover element, it was okay. But they threw together so much from the Naruto franchise, where it's all the stuff that you remember, but none of that stuff happened at the same time. So so there's that. Um, I probably won't be ordering any more comics or anything like that for a while, especially from like in stock trades or anything. So, and I looked and I don't have anything in my pull box yet. So I may not pick up my pull box until like February. AJ3 says any GI Joe material. No. I like GI Joe. I trade weighted on this stuff. So I know that there's the new Energon universe, and I know that those GI Joe comic books have been pretty good. They've been pretty well received. I may get them on in stock trades. I'm getting them from trade waiting rather than buying the floppies. WG Phil says it seems DC is banking on Superman Legacy to save DC. What's the best and worst case scenario for the Gunverse? Well, the best case scenario is that people actually like it. I looked at that trailer and I wasn't thrilled. I thought it was typically too many characters. You got Mr. Terrific, you got Hawk Girl, you got Guy Gardner. I'm like, why are these people in Superman story? Why are these people here? Um, I don't know why would Mr. Fantastic be in a Superman movie? I don't know. I literally don't know. So there's that. Uh, so best case scenario, they can actually launch a franchise. But I will say this: James Gunn is pretty good at establishing superheroes. Like he did a really good job with Peacemaker, and Superman needs it. It needs it. But again, we're dealing with an issue where I think a lot of people saw the opening seconds of that trailer and just said, you know what, enough's enough. A lot of the people that I usually watch, they saw Superman crouched over bleeding and was like, no, this is horrible. And I'm saying, okay, it makes sense that you would be agitated about that being the first sight of James Gunn's Superman is him being cut up and bleeding and busted up in the snow. I get it. But at the same time, Superman. So, like the question would be, how the hell did he come to be that way? Which would be my question. Because it is Superman. So you're like, okay, if Superman's all beat to shit, how did that happen? I wasn't tripping on Superman getting beat up. I was kind of like, well, okay. My my internet cut off for a little bit. Anyway, like I said, I haven't watched any horror in a while. So yeah, my internet cut out and I had to start over. So it kicked me out for a second. Um, so no, I don't. The only thing I got is this big book of Vampirella I still haven't finished reading yet. So I got that. Does that count? It probably shouldn't. But I am wondering how a series like Vampirella, which ended up being so popular in the 70s and 80s and stuff, didn't get a movie and a TV series. 'Cause it seems like it was written perfectly for movies and television and such. WG Phil says, I think Gunn is too reliant in giving his brother or friends roles is to the detriment of the content he's making. Maybe that nepotism stuff doesn't really work out. You know, maybe it's not good. Maybe it's terrible for the product. But I like Peacemaker, so I'm willing to give him a shot. I liked Guardians of the Galaxy, so he did Guardians of the Galaxy, right? So I'm a fan. You know, I like it. I'm looking at this New Gods book from DC so far, and I like the art. I haven't read it. It's a lot of words on this page right here, but I'm still in the high seas trying to look at different stuff. This is the only way I'll read a DC or a Marvel comic book today is if I look it up first. So I've been looking up Absolute Batman and all that kind of stuff just to stay on top of it. I wanted to read Daredevil too. I'm a big Daredevil fan. I just don't want to pay what $4 or $5 to read it. AJ3 says the way Hollywood and entertainment industry is just now just is good. We canceled and debunk everything entirely. Yeah, I mean it's everything is a fight with these people, man. It's kind of sick. Nothing ever gets done because you're too busy fighting. It's not. It takes the fun out of everything when all you guys do end up fighting. You end up fighting bullshit ideas from people who don't know you, but naturally assume that they can guess everything about you from your taste in movies or television shows or whatever. It's pretty stupid. You're being judged by the creators. It's pretty dumb. I don't understand why they would even participate in that outside of just being retarded, which you would have to be in order to get involved with these sorts of things. But as far as I'm concerned, I learned my lesson when it comes to reading big two comics, and some people didn't learn their lesson when it comes to reading big two comics. They don't get my money. I don't read big two comics and go and buy them. I don't go to the movies. Like for me, this stuff is just I'll sail the high seas and get it one way or the other. But putting money on the wood, good luck. I don't think so. And I think that since the people hate you who made it, then it should be fine for you to go ahead and pirate it. I mean, they think it's okay to shoot a guy in the back while he's walking down the street for no good reason. So I think you could pirate a Daredevil comic book, you know. I don't think that these two things are equal by any stretch of the imagination. So let's see. Let's see if there's anything else you guys are talking about here. I think that's it. We can wrap this up. I think you guys should definitely go watch the early Planet of the Apes movies. They're good escapism. They're political because they're sociological in a sense, but I thoroughly enjoyed them. Now my internet's not working. What is happening? My tablet's not working either. He said, "Do you have or shopped at any American-made products?" I'm very confused. What do you mean? Because I don't know where the paper comes from. These so these things are like when I buy something, I don't know where it comes from, and I don't ask either. I only ask that it's affordable. I don't care where it comes from. Dylan O'Berry says the problem with Hollywood is good movies which have good content don't get enough box office collections. These adaptations of superhero comic books are overrated and cringe. I agree. I think there's too many, and quite frankly, I think rebooting Superman every few years is boring. I think rebooting Batman every few years is boring. I think it's creatively bankrupt. I think it's creatively bankrupt to keep relaunching Spider-Man. But that just goes to show that we're not creating anything. We're we're mining on things from the 80s. I think somebody posted a list of movies that were big movies in the 80s, and it was like Indiana Jones and Terminator and um, a bunch of stuff like that. And I looked and I was like, well, most of these movies they tried to remake within the last 5 or 6 years. Didn't they come out with a new Indiana Jones movie not long ago? There's a new Terminator movie every other year now. Like they're really draining the shit out of these franchises. They're not creating anything new. They're just mining things that already exist and buying up each other. These corporations are trading the IP, buying each other out, rebooting the shit, and then burning it into the ground again. So it's like, man, we can't get anything new. Good luck getting anything new. So it's not really fair to the audience because, like I said, man, when most of us were like, well, when I was a kid, there was all kind of different stuff that was being created, you know. But now you have these people who just basically their job is to go back in the past and take Indiana Jones or Terminator or whatever and make it woke feminist. And you're like, why? But the point is to aggravate people. This is agitprop. The point is to agitate. It's to piss you off. It's to make you mad. I don't let it make me mad. I just don't watch it. I don't get mad. I just turn it off. I just look away. There's so much stuff that I haven't read. Why get mad about stuff being changed in things that I already have read? You know? WG Field says they can't. It's easy to buy IPs and make it suitable to a modern audience. The crazy thing is, it's not really even suitable to a modern audience. It's just mutilated for modern sensibilities. The audience didn't ask for any of this stuff. That's why this stuff flops. It's not that they changed it for the audience. They changed it for the politicians and the other people who are involved in these situations. It has nothing to do with the audience. I don't remember anybody in the audience, nobody in the real audience, I guess you could say. I mean, people who actually spend money on these franchises that ask for any of this stuff. It's always people who are on the outside who want this stuff. AJ3 says, why don't they make movies that talk about welfare, Planned Parenthood, abortion, and make horror movies out of them? That would, for starters, it would mean that they have to admit that those things are bad, which they won't do. They won't admit those things are bad. They like those things. Which should tell you where their mind frame is. They made a movie called They Cloned Tyrone because niggas would rather believe that there were clones of their favorite rappers. They made a movie called They Cloned Tyrone, and that they making movies about cloning because at least it's modern. At least it's a modern thing that they can talk about, but it's not realistic. So many people believe that, oh, Gucci Man got cloned when he went to jail. Like, come on, get the fuck out of here. Stop being brain rotted. How would you clone a nigga while he's in jail? And clone him for what? Why would you need two of those dudes walking around? Yeah, I mean, if you made a horror movie about something like, let's say, welfare, what it would look like is human beings being turned into pets by other human beings. That's essentially what you are. You got to behave, or you don't get your money, your ration in this month. You're gonna put a collar on you, and they put some water in your bowl, and that's your portion for now. But that it seems like it's a good idea right now, but we'll see what happens in the future. At some point, they're gonna start cutting that stuff off. WG Phil says, as many people parade Japan and South Korea for entertainment, the West is slowly eroding it, and Japan and Korea will allow it unless it's black characters. I don't think so. I think Japan would rather, because look, the mangaka don't make stuff for the world; they make stuff for Japan. It just so happens that these certain things cross over, and that's where a lot of the Dragon Ball fans and stuff don't really get it. Is that Toriyama never made Dragon Ball for the United States, where it was like, or like Latin America, where it was more popular. He was always making Dragon Ball for the Japanese. And that's why Goku being a kid keeps happening, because that's when he was more popular in Japan. They don't give a fuck about the United States. The series is made for the people in Japan. If you enjoy it, that's great. But it's for the Japanese people, you know? And the characters are going to be portrayed in a way that's good for the Japanese people or the fans of the manga and anime in Japan. That's the goal. That's their target audience. All of these people who are online screaming about Goku not being able to beat up a Kraken, they don't give a fuck about those people. You are the hardcore wrestling fan of the Dragon Ball franchise. You know, like I am. I realized that. I realized that a long time ago when Toriyama basically said he didn't want Goku to be a superhero, without recognizing that's the reason why he even became popular in America in the first place, is because people thought Goku was a superhero, basically. And the virtues that he had put into the character were human universals about self improvement and bettering yourself and being humble. And he didn't really, it kind of went over his head. And it happens sometimes when you're a writer and you're like, I didn't intend for this to happen. Like, okay, but it did. you know, it's the Alan Moore effect. He thought everybody was going to hate Rorschach. It didn't happen. People then loved Rorschach, and he didn't understand it. You know, but Toriyama went about trying to make Goku what he wanted him to be. Because he always thought Goku's been, selfish and sort of self-centered in a way. Like he's not malicious, but he's not Superman either. While in the West, they made him essentially Superman from Japan, and he didn't necessarily like that. And they've been going Dragon Ball Super and Daima and all that kind of stuff is undoing all of that, which is why it aggravates so many of the American fans. But I don't see a lot of the same complaints from the Japanese fans. I see mostly people who speak English who are extremely mad about what's happening in Super and what's happening in Daima and all this kind of stuff. They hate it. But Japan don't seem to care, because you're not the target audience in the United States. You're a fan of the franchise, which is great, but it's a Japanese franchise. I mean, it's no different than if the Japanese like Superman You know, Superman is all about truth, justice, and the American way. You can't bend Superman so that he has Japanese values, because then the people who in Japan who like Superman, they like Superman the way you created him, the way that you have perpetuated him so far. They don't want you to change him. And it's the same thing here, where we liked Goku just fine. You know, you didn't have to go in there and try to change him, but he did. So it was like, okay, whatever. But that's the reason why Goku kept being a kid. As Dragon Ball Daima is the 40th anniversary of Dragon Ball, and they made Goku a child because that's when he was the most popular in Japan. And there's that. Everybody who keeps doing videos, oh, why is he a kid? You don't get it, and that's fine. You know, not everything is for everybody. AJ3 says, why not reboot some of the bad movies or movies that nobody talks about that were basically copycats of other franchises? That would be interesting. Like I said, there's a lot of blaxploitation movies that if you were to recreate them and make them a little bit more nuanced, they would be so much better. You know, I was thinking about Bucktown, for instance. Bucktown is a good movie, actually. It's not terrible. I was looking at the comment section as I was watching the movie, and so many people hated the middle of the movie. I don't know if you guys saw Bucktown, but it's about a character who's played by Fred Williamson. His brother passes away. His brother gets murdered. He comes to town to do the funeral. Uh, his brother owned a bar. His brother is dead. Now he owns the bar. He wants to sell it. He wants to get rid of it, but he has to wait for a certain amount of days for the estate to close and all this kind of stuff. And the town is full of corrupt police officers who was abusing his brother, all of his brother's friends and all this kind of stuff. So as per the usual in the blaxploitation story, Fred Williamson has to stand up to the man. So him and his crew, he calls a crew in from his town. They take over the city, kill all the corrupt police officers, and then the crew becomes the corrupt police officers. They become the corrupt authority in town. And now Fred Williamson has to fight against the guys that he brought in. That's the part of the story so many people hate. And why didn't they just kill all the cops and then end the movie right there? Like, because then the movie would be 40 minutes. Like it's been a 40-minute movie. I like the idea that they brought in the fact that it doesn't really matter who's in control because the situation is going to be the same. Corruption isn't a black issue or a white issue. It's not an issue about police either. It's an issue of people. You put corrupt people in positions of power, they will be corrupt and they will behave in a corrupt way. You could redo that movie. Probably not the exact same way, but you could redo that movie. There's other movies that were made that if you were creative, something like The Last Dragon, just think about how that movie was in the 80s. With the technology and stuff that we got today, you could turn The Last Dragon into an entire franchise and people would be 100% down for it. You know, look at Cobra Kai, for God's sake. They wouldn't rebooted the entire fucking Karate Kid franchise. I wasn't a fan of the Karate Kid, so I never watched Cobra Kai either. But that's something that you could have done. Now I understand that you don't want to touch the classics sometimes. You don't want to redo Blackula but look at all the Pam Grier movies like Foxy Brown, Sheba, Sheba Baby. All these actresses who probably could be able to recreate some of those movies, even if you don't want to use the racial element, even though they probably definitely would, which is inherent in all blaxploitation movies, that the villains are white for the most part. The villain is the man. But they recreated the Mac. Well, no, not the Mac, Superfly, and completely botched that one. So I'm actually not that interested in the recreated movies. Um, But there's also tons of black authors where movies have not been made of their work. For instance, there's plenty of Donald Goines novels that have never been adapted to movies or television shows. Um, DMX did Never Die Alone, which is a Donald Goines novel. But there's plenty of Donald Goines novels that were never turned into movies. That if you wanted to do a sort of black exploitation style, basically a modern movie set in the 1970s, the Donald Goines novels would be perfect to do something like that. While you have, and they're simple stories, they're hood tales. It doesn't involve a lot of CGI or anything like that. You could do something like that, but you have to be creative. You have to be a person who's thinking about, and actually, I'm going to just say this: you have to be in touch with black culture. So many of these Negroes in Hollywood, they're not in touch with black people at all. All right, so they may have went to a HBCU or something like that, but they weren't around niggas. Right? They don't know nothing about niggerdom. All right, they just don't know. They think in stereotypes. We're gonna make a movie about the 1990s, so we're gonna have Bloods and Crips and gangster rap from that time, and it's like, yeah, okay. You can mock it and have your parodies, but you ain't in touch with true niggerdom. You need to go and listen to your grandfather. Go talk to your uncles. About how a barbecue was in 1999 or something like that. It's different. It's different. And I think these movies that have come out, these television shows too, as supposed to represent blackness in modern day, they're basically, I don't want to say white people stories because most of the people who created them are black, but they're black middle class Negroes overcompensating because they have no authentic relationship with other black people. They don't. That's what makes the DEI stuff even more terrible. Imagine that, somebody is named Sarah Yo. Her last name is Yoh. And you look at her and she's like, oh, I'm Chinese. Like, oh, great. We're going to do a Kung Fu movie. And the only thing she knows about Kung Fu movies is what she's seen on television because she was born in San Francisco, has never been to Japan or China, doesn't really eat, actual Chinese food. She's American, right? She doesn't know fuck all about China. What kind of movie she's going to make? She's going to make an American movie about Chinese people. It's not going to be a Chinese movie. And what ends up happening is the exact same thing. You find all these black people who are black, and they're very proud of their blackness, but they're not black enough. They were not from the hood. They went to special schools and they had a free ride to college, and all that woke shit has carried them through life. They talk about how great all the activists are, and they know Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King and the Black Panthers, all of our freedom fighters, all of our soldiers. Oh, they know all the names, and they just start making movies about these people, and they're all just nebulous. There's nothing about them that is individualized. Nothing about it is true. It's all lionized heroism. And you're like, you just don't get it. Like, there's so many people out there who don't fully understand other people. And maybe it's propaganda, maybe it is. Who knows? Like, there was a conversation recently on Twitter about Nelson Mandela. I learned this years ago. Nelson Mandela was a communist and a terrorist. I knew that in 2000. But there are still people today who don't believe that he was a communist or a terrorist. Like, you think he just got thrown in jail because he was black? Well, yeah. Like, see, you're not in touch with blackness. You don't understand anything. You know, you swallow the Kool-Aid. And I'm not saying that he's a bad guy or anything. The white people say he's bad. The people who who were affected by what South Africa was turned into after he took power, those people, hate Nelson Mandela. But that, of course, that just means that the blackity blacks, or what they call the bliggities, those people love Nelson Mandela. They don't care that he was involved with terrorism, that he, destroyed the economy and all that kind of stuff. They don't give a shit. It's a black man in power. That's good, right? Like that's not good thinking. that's not good critical thinking skill. Dylan O'Berry says, "Do you think Triple H will run out of steam like Tony Khan after some time? It's just Dynamite and Rampage being worse." I think it's inevitable that it's just going to be bad after. It's already running on steam. I think Triple H is. I don't think he has too much control over the top guys. From what it sounds like, what it looks like, guys like The Rock, Roman, and CM Punk, they're calling their own shots. They're doing their own thing, and Triple H is just opening up a lane so they can do whatever they want. It's everybody else that's getting fucked over because they're the ones who are following Triple H around and trying to get him to do stuff, while Roman is booking himself and The Rock is booking himself and everything. So it is what it is. But WG Phil says, "I watched It's a Wonderful Life, but disappointed in the fact that the Blackish creator is in charge of the reboot." Oh, well, see, there you go. Have fun with that. They ain't gonna do nothing but piss everybody off. Again, that's the point of agitprop. The point of agitprop is to piss people off. These people who have, like I say, man, you want to talk about race relations, when everybody discusses race relations. They think every single place is the worst place based on the worst place ever. It's like you might have a situation where there's really is like some kind of sundown town where Negroes aren't allowed, but most of the 1950s and 60s didn't have that kind of shit. You can go back and there was plenty of people writing in, Ebony and Jet magazine about black people having debutante balls, and white people were there. They had white neighbors and all this sorts of stuff. There was middle class blackness and all these sorts of things that was occurring. But if you see a movie set in the 1950s, almost always Confederate flags everywhere. People still believe today that the Ku Klux Klan is running stuff. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? They have these cartoonish views of the world that's not based on reality, but it's based on shit they see on TV. Like they have no idea what the Ku Klux Klan is. Like they just don't know because they're not in touch with it. The only thing they need to know is the Ku Klux Klan, they hate black people. That wasn't even a major part of what the Ku Klux Klan was formed. It was formed as a fraternity, like a regular fraternity, like the Elks Lodge. And only a few of those people even involved with anything racist. And in terms of just walking around lynching people, they killed more of their own white people than black people ever. And the reason why the Ku Klux Klan was investigated by the federal government. This is one of the things that we keep having these conversations. Like this insurance killer kid, he getting charged with terrorism. I don't know whether that's right or wrong. I really don't care too much. But they were like, the Ku Klux Klan never got charged with terrorism. Like, dude, when was the last time you read about Klansmen getting arrested? Because I remember reading in Newsweek when I was in college about not even Ku Klux Klan members, because again, the Ku Klux Klan has almost no authority or power or anything in the United States. There's barely any Ku Klux Klan members in the United States anywhere on earth. All right. It's people have created this boogeyman that they think it exists everywhere all the time. Like you go to a white man's house and you see a white sheet all of a sudden. Oh my God, he's a Klansman. It's like, no, he has white sheets for his bed, for God's sake. Quit being a pussy. Right? But these guys, the COINTELPRO shit that they did on the Black Panthers, they did it on the Ku Klux Klan too. But you people who studied I studied the Black Panthers. I read all the FBI files. You didn't read any on the Klan, did you? Because they still doing that shit to anybody who's in a white organization. The Michigan Wolverines, the guys who supposedly were going to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer. That's what they did to them. It was counterintelligence. They put 2 guys or maybe more in their organization to talk them into doing stupid shit so they can arrest everybody. How is that exactly any different than what they were doing to the Arabs? Because they did it here in Michigan. They put federal agents who happen to be Arabic in some of these mosques and tried to get them to talk about doing terrorism. And then they got busted. It was entrapment. They've been doing this shit for decades. You think, oh, the Black Panthers are so special. They've been doing this shit for decades. They've been doing it for decades. Like, this is how you know when people are not really in touch. The Move House happened in the 1980s. What happened with the Move House was there was a lot of complaints to the city of Philadelphia about these kids who were unkempt. And the move, was, I think, was it John Africa and all his family or whatever. There was a bunch of kids. They were dirty, filthy, all that kind of shit, just stank because they were trying to be back to nature kinds of black folks. Ended up in a shootout where the police claimed that John Africa and his family shot at them. And they ended up bombing the house, which of course killed damn near everybody in the house, right? It was really over the top terrorism from the government. And people will talk about that and they'll say, oh, it never happens to white people. You never heard of Waco? You never heard of Ruby Ridge? Where this exact thing happened to white people? It's they think that the government is against them and only them. They don't look into any other subjects or to confirm or anything. It's a very me-centered, ridiculous ideology that is completely detached from history, and it's all about what they've seen on television and what they get told by other woke fucking idiots. And it seemed like every other day there's more people coming out saying things that people don't want to hear. And this leads me to like Chad O. Jackson and Teach 'em Chuck and Vince Edward. Is it Vincent Ellison? I think it is. Where they're going to do a documentary about like the truth behind Martin Luther King and all this kind of stuff, because they still get tight ass when you tell about Martin Luther King being a communist and that he wasn't a real Christian. Like, these things can be proven. You can look these things up, but you can't tell people this because they're not in touch. They only know what they know from television. And look, I can't expect everybody to know everything that I know, or it's impossible. But so many people have chosen that they like the pseudo historical reality that they live in. That every town is a sundown town. White people riding around caring so much about what black people are doing, when in reality they really didn't care. There's a small number of people who gave a fuck about what black people were doing, even back then. Like, even back then, most they were too concerned about themselves and their own ability to survive than caring at all about black people. But these things are, and it was an expectation that black people were due for self back then too. Not like today where, white folks are expecting you to eat out their hand, which is what black people want actually, is for white people to, you lean down with your bird feet so I can peck it out of your hand, which is, I can guarantee you that is not what Frederick Douglass wanted. It's not what, Marcus Garvey or Booker T. Washington or any of those people wanted. They didn't want white people bird feeding them, which is, chewing it for them and then spitting it in their mouth. Nor did they want them to feed them like a puppy right out of their hand. But that's what a lot of black people today want. It's unfortunate because they're not in touch. They don't actually read. They don't read books written by their ancestors. They read books written by Negroes 50, 60 years later that didn't do any real diligence. Like if you read a history book and it's all positive, it's bullshit. If you read a history book and it's all negative, it's bullshit. Right? You should already know if it's a human being, they did something that other people don't like. And therefore it's probably somewhere in the universe that they did something that people don't like. So when you read about these Black Panthers, they're all just heroes, they're superheroes. You should be like, okay, it's bullshit. So many people that don't know Black Panthers were involved with armed robbery, pimping the women that they claim they were supposed to be protecting. There's so many people out here who think, oh, the Black Panthers, they were formed to protect Black people from the police. No, that's not. They think the Crips were formed in the same way. The Crips, oh, they were formed to protect Black people from the police. Huh? Now, how is it they started killing niggas over T-shirts and shoestrings and everything? How did we get there? How do we go from we're going to protect you from the police to you can't wear red in my neighborhood? What was that? What was that leap about? No, it was bullshit. You're lying. All right. That's the history they tell you because they want you to make excuses for their own behavior. Just like the Black Keystone Rangers in Chicago. I believe the federal government gave them $1 million. What did they give them $1 million for? Uh, was it like an educational center or a clinic or something? They were a fucking street gang. It was like protection, like a protection racket. But they were a fucking street gang. Jeff Fort went to fucking prison. He's a murderer. But you can't tell people this. They think that, oh, the white man, they hated the Black Panthers and all that. The government gave them money. The government funded some of these Black Panther organizations. Some of these woke communist organizations got money from the government. They failed mostly due to being criminals and being fucking inept because most of these people were not trained nurses. Oh, they had clinics. They weren't trained nurses. They weren't trained doctors. They didn't know what the fuck they were doing. Oh, they had a food program. So what? You know how hard it is to pour some cereal for a baby? It wasn't that damn difficult. When they started trying to do anything else, they found out they didn't have any money. They either went and stole it or they hectored the government to get it. And it still ended up flopping. Because they were fucking morons. They were activists. The moment they got their hands on money, they didn't know what to do with it because they didn't earn it. They're communists. This is you would have to actually look into these things. The Lincoln Clinic in New York, Mutulu Shakur, who was the stepfather of Tupac Shakur, a fucking crackhead who robbed people, is a doctor, quote unquote. He's a doctor of acupuncture. He's not a surgeon or anything like that. Okay, okay. He's a doctor of acupuncture and a crackhead. But you can't tell people that. Oh, he's a Black Panther. Oh, okay. Sure, whatever. Whatever. Who gives a fuck? Um, AJ3 says, I wonder when we ever hear about white people in the ghetto on welfare and who are their leaders. No, because I never heard of the concept of white people having leaders, by the way. I only hear about Negroes having leaders. Negroes and Hispanics. You never hear about Asian leaders. You never hear about Muslim leaders. You hear about Muslim clerics, people who work in mosques and maybe religious leaders, but never like cultural leaders or anything like that. Dylan O'Berry says he personally wants to see Snow White getting bombed at the box office. Uh, I believe it's going to flop. I don't think anybody cares about Snow White. I'm actually very surprised Moana is doing very well. I've been talking too long. I'm about to hang it up. Yeah, it's been 2 hours. Go. Dennis King said they do make it seem like the Panthers were always good. Yeah, it's like, where did they get the money for all of this stuff that they were doing? Who had a job? These guys were in and out of jail constantly. They were getting into shootouts with police officers. Who had a job? None of these people had jobs. They were thieves and robbers and pimps and hoes. When they opened up a clinic, usually they stole stuff from other clinics, or they robbed Brinks trucks, or they robbed banks and went and bought what they needed, or they hectored the government and the government gave them money and they went and blew it. You know, Dylan O'Berry, I thank you very much, sir. I thank you very much. But you have a lot of people, man. The agitprop works. They think that the Black Panthers were like the best thing that happened to black people. There's a reason why it died, and the reason why it never came back. People realized that there's a bunch of scumbags. And then the crazy thing is they wrote about how scumbaggy they were. Like, Eldridge Cleaver was proud of the fact that he was a rapist. Wrote about it openly in his book. And all these people will read the book, see that this guy's a rapist, and then make excuses for his behavior. You'd be like, no, you just don't get it. You just don't get it. You want things to be one way. It's the other way. But there's a reason why the organization died. Most of them were coked out morons. And it is what it is. There's nothing you can do about that. History is written. And I understand that sometimes people are vicious against people who are quote unquote pro-black. But then if you actually go and read some like the Black Panther newspapers, you see how stupid they are. They think you can shoot at police officers and how dare they shoot back. They'll openly tell one side of the story. They were the ones pushing to build the ghettos and projects. And then 30 years later, talking about how terrible the projects were. They wanted the dope and the pushers out of the street. And then as soon as we started arresting them, they started wanting the dope and the pushers back in the street. Because it's a grift. It's not real. It's not based on anything legitimate. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys later, man. You guys peace out. And I don't know if I'm going to do a review of Raw. I might do one anyway, because I'm probably going to watch it. Even if I know I don't look at spoilers, so I probably will end up watching Raw, being very mad and doing a review anyway. But the reviews for tape shows are definitely going to be mostly news and notes. So I guess I'll see you guys Monday or Tuesday morning, probably. Peace out.